Gallen, and we're joined right off the bat by Jenny Vrentas of Sports Illustrated, who actually has the cover story this week on Le'Veon Bell. We are off and running at the owners' meetings. Christopher Johnson met with the local reporters here in Phoenix yesterday afternoon. Later today, GM Mike McCagnon will address the media as well. But without further ado, Jenny, it's so nice to see you as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay, listen, I love the article. I bought the Sports Illustrated at the airport before we left Sunday morning. And I love how you started it out. You were at a nightclub, the Rockwell, correct?
Right.
So
correct.
set this up. Set up the scene. Le'Veon Bell about to take stage. At what time? What kind of place was it? And what did you think about his music?
Yeah, well, not my normal scene. So I was a little bit past my normal bedtime, but he had an album release party last Saturday night. Obviously, he just released, he's been, composing rap music on the side. So he had Life's a Gamble was his most recent album. And so, there was one track specifically about his contract situation, Free at Last. So he had an album release party. There were lots of things going on at the nightclub with a couple other people's birthdays. There were a lot of spring breakers. So he got there around 2 and then ended up performing some of the tracks a little bit later on. So, yeah, I mean, he obviously has a lot of passions. Music is one of them. Football is one of them. So, and, has really channeled, I think, some of the feelings he felt, during his year away from the game. I know he said he recorded a lot of the album sort of late, November to early December when he was certain he wasn't playing this season and kind of took a break from working out and everything. He recorded the album during that period of time.
So as far as being a reporter, and you've covered a lot of stories in your time, have you ever been to something that late or that early in the morning where you were setting the scene?
I mean, I guess maybe a party after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Like, I was at the Patriots party this year after they won the Super Bowl, which I guess was similarly late, but yes, definitely out of my comfort zone.
So were you in the club with a notebook?
No, I was just kind of observing.
Okay.
I didn't have a notebook. Took a couple notes on my phone. On the Notes app on the iPhone. That was a little bit better way of doing it.
Okay, so a lot of your feature was focused on his time away. Mm-hmm. Jets fans are interested in what kind of Le'Veon Bell are they going to get in 2019 and beyond? What was your sense?
Yeah, I got the sense that he's really excited to get back to the football field. His mom was also there when we did the photo shoot, and she said she just really wants to see him play football again. It was a long year, but he seems really refreshed. He seems happy. His decision has been dissected, obviously, but he's at peace with it. He's happy. He's ready to move forward. And what really came through was his excitement to play for Adam Gase. He said they had a great conversation. Talked about different ways he could be used, different places he could line up on the field, what kind of routes he could run, a factor in both the run game and the pass game. It sounds like they both have a mutual excitement for him to be used that way.
Do you think he could be looped into the conversation with Antonio Brown because those guys played on the same team in Pittsburgh, where I think sometimes people are having difficulty separating their situations right now?
I think that's a great point. I do think they're getting lumped together, and they are, of course, different situations. The one similarity is, they both chose or figured out a way to move on from Pittsburgh, so that was something that we discussed in our conversation. But I think for Bell, it was, he had a contract offer from the Steelers. He didn't want to play in it. He didn't want to play on the one-year franchise tag, so he made a decision that he felt was in his best interest. And again, a lot of people have had a lot of opinions on the money and everything and how it worked out. But for him, he got a contract for the Jets that had the guaranteed money that he was looking for. He got a fresh start, which it seemed like he was looking for as well. So he's really happy. So, yeah, I think it's really hard to lump two players together and say everything's the same about them because their situations were very different. But, another similarity is just that they are both, among the best talents, offensive talents in the league right now. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see both of them on different teams.
Do you think it was fair that some people question Le'Veon Bell's passion for his game? Because if you look at what he accomplished throughout his first 5 years in the National Football League, we had never seen anything like that before.
He presents an extreme dilemma for opposing defenses, right? Because he's this powerful runner, but he can also catch balls out of the backfield, and he's shifty, and he has lots of moves to make you miss. So he's kind of one of those players that really is the prototypical modern day running back, right? That, can stress the defense a lot of different ways. And so, being away from the game was hard for him. He missed football. He almost came back a couple times last year. I think his plan for sitting out was sort of a moving target, and it was influenced by a lot of things. But I don't think that he didn't, I think that I don't think that year away says anything about his love for the game or his desire to be a big contributor for the Jets. I just think there were a lot of factors at play that it didn't make sense for him, and he made a personal decision.
Do you think he pays attention to the outside noise, meaning do you think he has somewhat of a chip on his shoulder now where people are doubting what he's going to do coming back to the football field after the year away?
He does have a chip on his shoulder. That was one thing he said. He said, I always have a chip on my shoulder. But we did talk about the outside noise, and he said he's kind of at a point in his life and his career where he just is able to block it out. The example he gave is you could pull up anyone's social media page, Odell Beckham or, any person in the NFL. Or he said even pull up Drake's social media page, and people are saying Drake is a terrible rapper. And he's like, Drake is not a terrible rapper, but you'll find someone to say anything. So he seems like he's pretty good at blocking out the noise, and I think the fact that he's so happy and at peace with the decision, despite the fact that a lot of people have criticized him for it, I think that really represents that.
Long before you went to Sports Illustrated Monday Morning Quarterback, you covered the beat.
Yeah.
What do you think about Le'Veon Bell not just joining a new team, but joining a team in New York?
I think he adds a lot of excitement to the Jets because he's this, nationally recognizable talent. Obviously, he played on a lot of big stages in Pittsburgh. And, I think not only will he be this, security blanket for Sam Darnold that they want, but I think he is the kind of player that comes to New York and brings an energy. He's a player that people will want to come see. And I think that's an interesting addition.
It seems like, too, he is a good talker as far as the media is concerned. I know I talked to a few people in Pittsburgh. I obviously read your article on Sports Illustrated. He seems like he is an open guy, and he will be someone that reporters go to talk to during the week and after games.
Yeah, this was my first time meeting him, but I got that sense as well that he, has a perspective that he wants to share. He wants to be truthful. He wants to be open and honest and give a window into all aspects of things. He certainly was that with us. I really enjoyed our conversation. We talked for about 2 hours. So, only a fraction of that gets into the article, but I felt like he gave me a perspective on his year away and was willing to sort of let us in. And I think he'll do that with New York media as well.
He's very close to his mother, right?
Yeah,
and can you talk about their relationship a little bit? Because you you set that scene in Miami at the nightclub where he's performing Life's a Gamble for the first time, and then like 14 hours later, a photo shoot in green and white, and his mom was there throughout.
Yeah, his mom, Lisa, was there, which was great. And so we got to chat with her a little bit. His whole family growing up, they were all Steelers fans because they grew up near Columbus, Ohio. His grandfather was a Steelers fan, his mother. Le'Veon was the only member of the family that was allowed to go to the grandfather's house not wearing Steelers gear, and he would often wear Curtis Martin T-shirt or Jets gear because he loved Curtis Martin's running style, which he shared. That's a big reason he was a Jets fan growing up. But yeah, has a very close relationship with Mom. She was there to kind of see the photo shoot happen, and I thought that her perspective was always a good one. She said, listen, she did advise him to take one of the Steelers' long-term deals, but once he made clear that, he was making his decision, this was his decision, she stuck by him and supported him, and was really, she said, excited to see him play for a team that he rooted for as a kid.
We're here at the NFL owners meetings in Phoenix, Arizona. Eric Allen joined alongside by Jenny Vrenta of Sports Illustrated. In just a moment, Chad Pennington is going to come on set, and then later we're going to have Chris Mortensen from ESPN. What are you following, tracking this week as the league meetings get underway in terms of storylines?
Yeah, last year we obviously had catch rule rewriting and lowering the helmet. This year nothing quite like that, although there is a lot of discussion about replay and how the pass interference non-call in the NFC Championship game, what adjustments, if any, the NFL will make. And I think there's a lot of different views. There's some support for the sky judge for coaches. There's other coaches that don't want to see replay expanded at all. So I think there's going to be a vibrant debate, and it'll be interesting to see if any of the proposals get 24 votes. I know the competition committee has recommended that you add certain fouls to be reviewable. So fouls that make the biggest impact on the game, like pass interference, or another proposal is pass interference, personal fouls, things of that nature. So we'll see.
Jets CEO Christopher Johnson was asked about it yesterday. He said he's going to have an open mind about it. He said one play in particular made him go berserk last year. That was a pass interference call on Jamal Adams in the end zone against the Green Bay Packers. But he said they're going to listen to every side of the argument before coming up with a decision. I thought in the immediate aftermath after that Saints-Rams NFC title game that there was going to be a strong push for it. Now I think that as time has moved on here, you get a sense maybe the league is not ready to go in that direction.
I agree. It seems like there may not be a change. I think there is some skepticism that 24 of 32 teams would vote for an expansion of replay or an expansion of something. What's interesting is the two proposals from the competition committee, none of them really address the idea of there being an egregious non-call like there was in the NFC Championship game. So as much as that has sparked the conversation, some of the proposals would not be able to correct a situation like that.
All right. She has the cover story on Sports Illustrated this week. It's Life's a Gamble. Le'Veon Bell, great work, good read, great catching up with you as always, Jenny Vrentas.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Eric.
All right, so that was Jenny Vrentas. We are here at the NFL League meeting in Phoenix, Arizona. Last year we were in Orlando, Florida, but now we're back here in Phoenix. And a familiar face is coming on board here, Chad Pennington. And then later in the show, we're going to have Chris Mortensen from ESPN. The Jets remain busy at One Jets Drive today as they announced the re-signings of both outside linebacker Brandon Copeland and tight end Neil Sterling. So the Jets remaining active, a couple depth signings there. Now Copeland, a fascinating story himself because the guy was signed for reserve duty last season and some special teams prowess as well, but he came on board. He gave the Jets some athleticism at the outside linebacker position, having a career year for the Jets. So they bring him back, and then Neil Sterling is part of that tight end crew led by, of course, Chris Herndon, who is one of the Jets' key foundational pieces. The Jets staying active here in free agency, but we're rolling on here. A guy who I didn't even know was coming here until a couple days ago is Chad Pennington. He joins us now live on set. What is going on? I got to imagine NFL Legends is active here in Phoenix.
Well, what's new for this year, Eric, is we have developed an NFL Legends Youth Advisory Committee. And this has come off of the NFL Way to Play initiative, which originally started with our players with the new rule changes and things like that each week, promoting ways to play with great technique and great plays that have been made on the NFL level. Now we're going to take that model, and through our committee, we're really going to work on aligning our game, not only from the NFL but all the way down to high school and youth football. And that's way to play, proper playing techniques, that's way to coach, and preparing to play as well. So our focus is really trying to align our game from top to bottom. We know that the health of our game relies on the grassroots level, youth football and high school. The standard of our game and the messaging of our game comes from the NFL. Yep. And so now how do we take those two top and bottom ends and align those so everyone that falls in between that has the right messaging, using the right lingo, the right techniques, the right ways, so we can make our game healthier and better.
Who's on the committee and how did this originate? Is this something that you pushed?
Well, just finished a podcast with 3 other members, Mark Brunell, a former Jet, Willie McGinnis, and Michael Robinson. We also have 5 other committee members and all of us have not only played in the NFL, but now we're involved either in the youth space or the high school space. And so we understand those challenges. And so we're excited about that. We're going to be presenting today not only to our general managers and coaches, but also to 75 high school coaches and talking with them, because we know that they're an important part of what we're trying to do. And as legends, we're the keepers of the game, and we've got to make sure that we're promoting the right messages and communicating correctly.
All right, why don't you give folks an update of what's going on down in Lexington, Kentucky, as you're starting a high school football program and year 1, and now what's ahead for you in year 2?
Well, obviously in year 1 was basic needs, necessities.
What school was it again?
Equipment, Sayre School. It's a school that was founded in 1854, small private school of about 550 kids, K through 12. Really enjoy the school from an academic standpoint. They're amazing academically, and athletically we're really working on trying to create that outdoor classroom with an athletic program, and that's important, and to where all of our students who want to be student athletes have that extension of the classroom outside of the classroom to where we can use that athletic program to develop the whole person. And so from a football standpoint, we have a unique opportunity to be a leader in that category as well as a pioneer in that category, and being able to take our first year, which was about buying equipment, just the simple basic things. Now we're moving into year 2, phase 2, where now we're installing a weight program and teaching all of our student athletes across the board, both male and female. You go to class, you play your sport, but you also train. You've got to prepare to play your sport. In football, we're leading the way. And then in year 2, we'll move into more varsity competition. And hopefully by year 3, we'll be playing a full 10-game varsity schedule.
How much of your dad is coming out as you are not only the guy who is putting the pylons in the back of the truck, but you were also the head coach of the team last year, were you not?
Well, I grew up on a Friday night bus, and I watched my dad for 30 years line fields, collect equipment, do all the things that high school coaches have to do. That's thankless. It's a labor of love. But I also saw the impact that he had on young men, and that was it really jumped out at me when he passed away, and all of his former football players coming to his services and telling me the impact that he had made on their lives through the game of football. And so that's why I love the high school space. I think our young men in particular, the game of football can be used to instill those characteristics and those life skills that they need to be successful, whether it be in business, at home with their families, or just in life in general. And part of that is living with a purpose, just like we play with a purpose. The other part is being connected, and football is a great connection point for all of us, and that's what we have to do in life as well to be successful, and so trying to use the game of football for that.
Okay, so let's talk some Jets football.
Okay.
Le'Veon Bell. The Jets go out in free agency, make a couple big-time splashes. I'll get to the defensive side of the ball later. What do you think about the acquisition, and how can he help a young quarterback?
Well, I think it's no secret that Le'Veon can be an X factor, and I think all teams, successful teams, have to have that X factor. That doesn't mean that the X factor makes all the plays or anything like that, but when you have an X factor, that produces a focus from your opponent that is a narrow focus that you have to stop this player, and so he brings that to the Jets. The Jets haven't had an X factor per se. Eventually, the X factor will be Sam Darnold. Yeah. But right now, as he's developing, the Jets offense has to have an X factor. Le'Veon Bell provides that X factor, and then everything from there and the improvement in the offense will stem from his production. How
unique is he, and did it surprise you at all when he said, growing up, I looked up to a guy like Curtis Martin because the way C-Mart set up his blocks, and he was a patient runner himself. And I don't think we've ever seen a guy like Bell before, the way he waits and waits and waits before he decides where he's going to go and what's the best time to attack.
Well, his form of running is certainly unique. I think it's difficult to prepare for. Sometimes it may be even difficult to game plan with, trying to see what type of runs fit his style. But for Le'Veon to mention Curtis Martin, whom I played with, is fantastic because, first of all, Curtis was the ultimate professional. Secondly, he was always available. Had one of the highest pain tolerances I've ever seen. And then third, his style of running was so productive because although he was patient, once he made a cut, he made sure he got positive yards for the offense, which is really, really important. And there's no question with my time with the Jets that we relied upon Curtis and his expertise and his ability to make plays for us.
What about as a pass catcher? This guy's numbers are off the chart. I mean, he's 4 yards shy of 8,000 yards from scrimmage, and he's only played 5 years in the National Football League. How can he help Darnold in the passing game and maybe possibly open some things up for guys like Robbie Anderson, Quincy Enunwa, and another new acquisition of Jameson Crowder?
Well, there's no question that when you have a running back who has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, who has the ability to line up out of the backfield and run routes, you create major matchup problems for the defense. And so that's another factor in Le'Veon's game that really bodes well for the Jets offense. And that's why he is an X factor. It's not just with Le'Veon behind the center. It's with where is he going to be on the field, what other things can he do for the offense that's going to make it more productive. And he brings that extra element of being able to catch the ball. And so from a quarterback's perspective, you know that if something doesn't look good down the field, you can dump it off to a Le'Veon Bell, who now turns a 4-yard gain into a 10-yard gain and a first down, keeps the chains moving. That changes the whole outlook of your offensive system.
How does Bell help dictate coverages from a quarterback's perspective?
Well, he can be used in formations to determine man-zone reads.
Yep.
When you move him out of the backfield, the quarterback can get an immediate man-zone read because is a linebacker lining up on him? Is a corner lining up on him? How are they adjusting to him out of the backfield? So that's certainly number one. And then just having that security and knowing that I don't necessarily have to push this ball and force this ball down the field if it's not there. I've got a guy who can really do some damage one-on-one in space. And so sometimes some of your greatest run plays are short pass plays where you're just trying to create a one-on-one matchup because you know that Le'Veon Bell will win that matchup.
If you're Darnold right now, do you reach out to him in the offseason, or have you maybe already, speaking from a leader's perspective, where this guy has got a year under his belt now, he's going to be entering his second year, just turning 22, but when you get a guy that caliber, when you get a guy like Jameson Crowder, when you trade for Kelechi Osemele up front, what do you have to do to start establishing yourself even more as a leader?
Well, you have to build relationships. Our game is based upon relationships. It's based upon people. And so you have to stay connected with your teammates. You've got to build those relationships so that then they can trust you and that you have their back on and off the field. That's where it starts. It's not about a scheme, an X or an O. It's about that relationship. Part of that is making these phone calls. Part of that is reaching out to your guys. And it's probably even more prevalent and relative now because guys are coming into the complex later. They have more time in the off season. When I was playing, we were in the complex by mid-February. We were seeing guys then. So making those calls, reaching out, and staying connected with each other before you meet each other in the complex will be important.
We're joined at the NFL League meetings by Chad Pennington, our quarterback. You can watch him on Jets programming throughout the 2019 season. Such a pleasure to have him on, as always. What about on the other side of the ball? What do you think about C.J. Mosley, a guy who's going to come in and help the culture? That's what Adam Gase has said.
Well, I think I've heard coaches say this. You work down the center of the field, down the center with the football. And so on defensively, you work from the defensive tackle to the linebacker to the safety. Now the Jets have those three entities in place. Very productive players, and C.J. Mosley is another example of that. So that provides stability. It provides playmaking ability. It provides a leader in the huddle to make sure that guys are lined up correctly, that the defense is communicating correctly. Defense is such about communication, process of elimination, making sure that you're in the right spot. Half of defense is being able to align correctly, to line up to where you're not out leveraged. And so when you have a safety and a linebacker that can do that, it bodes well for the rest of the defense. So I think it's a fantastic acquisition. And the whole key to all of this is these guys being able to stay healthy and available And I also think that expectations are really, really important. I think making sure that we as a fan base don't place an unrealistic expectation on these guys with the hype and everything that's coming in, that it's going to take time. It's going to take some patience for this team to mesh, to come together, to build that chemistry and that unity. That does not happen overnight. It does not happen just through a series of OTAs. That's going to be a year-long process and even further, and that's why it's exciting to see guys like CJ and guys like Le'Veon have these longer type contracts where that continuity can be built.
What's the challenge ahead for your buddy Adam Gase, a guy who you've become quite friendly with over the years as he starts year one? We talked about it in the past, but you just mentioned it, that the Jets are adding a lot of new pieces in here. But he's had first-year success before. We saw that in Miami in year one. Guy goes out and leads them to a 10-6 mark, and they're in the playoffs.
I think Adam, there's no question that he has a great football mind. He has proven time and time again that he can get production from all of his players. And so really the key to me for Adam this first year is not about football. It's really about building those relationships with his players and making sure that both coaching staff and players are working together and are connected and can relate to each other, because that's what this game boils down to. It rarely boils down to one specific play or technique. It's going to be about those guys trusting each other, working together, and working through the roller coaster ride of each season. And I think Adam has learned a lot from his first stint as a head coach, and he'll take those experiences, those mistakes, and those successes in Miami and now apply those to the Jets and make this team better.
What do you have like planned for a guy like that who is so passionate and fiery, and you can tell he loves the game? He can't wait for players to get back in the complex. I mean, he's working his way through the complex, and he's building relationships in there. And Christopher Johnson said it yesterday, CP, that he's coming over the business side a lot, and he's talking to people throughout. But he's talked multiple times that April 8th, man, that's when the guys get back.
Well, exactly, and that's his strength. That's his comfort zone. That's his wheelhouse. He's all about ball, and I think his players have always respected that he's up front, he's honest, you know where he stands. I think as a player, even when you disagree with the coach but you understand where he is and where he stands, you can deal with that because there's a compass there, there's a foundation there, and you can work from that. And so I think that's one of his strong points.
What about Jamison Crowder? The Jets needed a slot going into the free agency, and enter Crowder, a guy who, when he was healthy in Washington, he was one of Kirk Cousins' favorite targets.
Oh, there's no question. Made some great plays down the field. Anytime you have a guy inside that can create matchup issues, that can really force a defense to choose whether they want to stay base or nickel coverage, it bodes well. You've seen the Patriots do that with guys inside like Edelman and those type of guys to create a lot of different matchup issues and create a lot of different yards, a bunch of yards inside. And so being able to bring a guy who not only has that ability, he has a little shake to him, has a little speed, he can make some things happen yards after the catch. That's exciting. And when you add him to Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa, two guys who bring very specific roles to the team as well, now you've got a core of three receivers that do specific things and have their role and can really be productive in what they're asked to do.
You were at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and your group was the quarterbacks, so you got an opportunity to be around Kyler Murray. A lot of talk about the Arizona Cardinals possibly taking him number one overall. Just your initial thoughts, your impressions on Murray, and also would that bode well for the Jets if he goes one, because then you're not looking for a quarterback. If
right.
You're the green and white, you got your guy in-house.
Well, obviously, if a quarterback goes in within the first two picks, now you have a better chance of getting that edge rusher, whether it be Josh Allen, whom I'm familiar with, living in Lexington with Josh playing at the University of Kentucky, or Nick Bosa. So that gives you a better chance to acquire a guy like that. So that's important. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think the Jets have made some really, really good moves in the offseason. I think the fan base is starting to get rejuvenated and excited and to see what these guys can do.
Okay. So you just said it. You live right there in Lexington. You have watched Josh Allen from afar. You probably had a little bit of interaction with him. What do you know about Josh, and why was he able to break out late in his career at Kentucky?
Well, first of all, I would say his work ethic. I think Coach Stoops and that coaching staff did a great job of developing Josh, and he stayed the course and just kept getting better and better each year. We get so enamored with the young talent, but we forget that it is truly about a development process. You're watching that in college basketball with Zion Williamson. I mean, the only way you get better is to work at it and to play. And this business of saving yourself doesn't make sense to me. And so with Josh, and especially in the game of football, being able to develop over his years at University of Kentucky has obviously proved beneficial to him and for him. And what he brings to the table is that element of being able to get around the edge, create that pass rush without having to do anything crazy with your defensive scheme, where now you can focus more on coverage, double teams, bracket coverages, all these different things you can do because you have one guy that they definitely have to pay attention to. And, oh, by the way, you have a really nice pass rusher inside too with Leonard Williams. So now you're not only collapsing the pocket from the outside, you're pushing the pocket from the inside. Very difficult as a quarterback to handle that.
All right, so if Murray does go 1, and we're a month away from the draft, a month to the day, the Jets will either have Joey Bosa on the board, Nick Bosa, his younger brother, got to get him confused, and Josh
You're
Allen.
making me think about it.
Yeah, Nick or Josh Allen. They're at 3. Or you're open for business as well.
Sure.
Because if you want to move back, you can. You have multiple third-round picks from the Teddy Bridgewater deal.
Sure. So all the options are on the table,
Yeah.
and I think that's a great place to be. I don't think that right now any crazy decisions have to be made. A lot of times some of the best decisions get made at the very last minute because teams will do some unordinary things right there at draft time. They'll feel that pressure. They'll make an offer to a team, and then a team gets a great deal by trading out of that pick. So there's really no reason to really force the issue right now. Really study the player, study what your needs are, and let's just see how it unfolds.
Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, who do you have in your bracket? Because you just dropped a Zion Williamson reference here. And, of course, Duke snuck one out yesterday. You live right there.
They did.
You live right there in Lexington. Your boys play basketball. So who you got now?
Well, I did do a bracket. My boys did a bracket,
Okay.
and those brackets are a little bit all over the place. One of my boys has Duke, another has North Carolina, I do believe, and then another one has another team. I forgot who it was. One of them has Purdue going to the Final Four.
I like that pick.
Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting game, and so obviously we do pay attention to UK. So they have a tough one in Houston, Sweet 16, but. March Madness, it's been fantastic. It's always been great, even when I was growing up. Remember those brackets, so I'm interested to see what happens.
March Madness, and we are underway at the NFL League meetings. Remember, keep on coming back to NewYorkJets.com and all our social platforms throughout the day because GM Mike McCagnon is scheduled to speak to the media later this afternoon. Special thanks to Jenny Vrentas from Sports Illustrated coming by. She had the cover story on Le'Veon Bell this week, and of course, this man, one of the busiest folks out there, Chad Pennington, former Jets quarterback, made his way as well. We are signing off from Phoenix, Arizona.